Guys, welcome back to another Brokowski's YouTube video. For most people, it is the Fantasy Championship, and here are our top 24 wide receivers for Week 17.
And boys, before we get into the video, check out our free group chat on Chalkboard. On that group chat, we have our full free rankings this video, top 24 wide receivers, but on the free Chalkboard, 48 wide receivers ranked, 36 RBs, 20 tight ends, 20 QBs. We also have our waiver wire targets. If you want to go check that out, first link in the description. It's absolutely free.
First wide receiver, this guy has been on a absolute tear. Justin Jefferson, he's the current wide receiver 1 in fantasy. I believe over the last 2 games, he's averaging over 30 points. Obviously, an elite player. It has to be wide receiver 1 for us.
Next up, at wide receiver 2, we got Tyreek Hill. He's playing the Patriots, played him last time in week 1, had a pretty solid game. Also, Tyreek Hill has been on an absolute tear. Last week didn't score a touchdown, but basically 3 or 4 weeks before that he did. He's been pretty good scoring touchdowns. He's had great yards all season. He's a great start in the fantasy championship.
And wide receiver number 3, we got Jamar Chase. Since returning from injury, he's been absolutely balling out, getting force-fed targets, has a super safe floor, and obviously a super high ceiling. Expect a super high scoring game. Bengals against the Bills on Monday night.
Next up, at wide receiver 4, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's been super safe all season when he's healthy. Jared Goff and him have an amazing connection. Last week, he had a decent game, but Zylstra, the Lions tight end, somehow had 3 touchdowns somehow. If just one of those went to Amon-Ra, he would have had a much better game. Still had a solid game for fantasy. He's been super safe, has upside all season. He's a great play.
Dropping down a tier. It's weird seeing some of these guys not be in the top tier, but the Raiders offense has been pretty bad recently. It's technically a good matchup for wide receivers, but it's just because the Niners are so elite against the run, and it's just garbage time points. So maybe Adams gets garbage time points. Maybe the Raiders offense steps up, but Adams hasn't been great recently because of the offensive struggles for the Raiders, so we had to drop him down a tier.
Next guy, another guy we had to drop down a tier, we got Stefon Diggs. He's been so bad recently. Less than 5 points last week, less than 6 points the week before. I'm pretty sure he only had 2 targets last game. He's averaging 9 a game on the season, only 2. Very concerning, but could be a very high-scoring game. Bills versus Bengals. Could be kind of a playoff atmosphere. Hopefully they use Diggs more. Hopefully he gets back on track, but his recent, just how bad he's been, he has to move down.
Another player who has been amazing recently, CeeDee Lamb, had over 30 points last week and plays Thursday night against the Titans. It's an amazing matchup. Titans have been horrible, absolutely horrible against wide receivers. CD has tons of upside.
And next up, at wide receiver 8, we got T. Higgins, another player in this Bills-Bengals game. T. Higgins has been balling out recently. I think over the past couple weeks, he's actually averaged more points per game than Jamar Chase when they're both healthy. Chase obviously has that higher ceiling, has that blow-up potential, but T. Higgins is pretty safe.
First player in the next tier, we got A.J. Brown, another player that's dropping a tier. Not so sure if it's deserved. He was still great last week without Jalen Hurts, but there is kind of a quarterback limbo. Not sure if Jalen Hurts is playing, not sure if he's not. And the Saints are a pretty good defense, obviously fighting for a playoff spot, so they're going to put obviously everything out on the line. It might be a bit of a tougher matchup for Philly, but still, A.J. Brown is still an elite player.
And next up, we have Keenan Allen, an absolute target hog. This guy's been getting so many targets, 11 catches, around 11 catches last week. The past 2 weeks before that, 14, 15, somewhere around their targets. Getting the ball an insane amount, not scoring a ton of touchdowns, but it almost doesn't matter. Tons of yards, over 100 yards last week, tons of targets. Also plays the Rams. It is a pretty good matchup.
Next up, DeAndre Hopkins, again falling down the rankings a little bit. Last week, 10 targets, only 1 catch with Trace McSorley. It was a brutal game for Hopkins. Not sure if it's going to be McSorley or Cole McCoy this week. If it's Cole McCoy, obviously raises him up a little bit, but with Trace McSorley, just doesn't look like he has tons of upside.
At wide receiver 12, we have Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin getting so many targets. The Bucs run so many screens with him. Great for PPR. Not scoring a ton of touchdowns on the season. This Bucs offense as a whole isn't scoring a lot, but Godwin is looking like the wide receiver 1. He's been playing better than Mike Evans. Against the Panthers, must-win game. They're going to get Chris Godwin the ball. Love him in fantasy.
First elite wide receiver 2, we got Garrett Wilson. Hasn't been as good recently, but it's because it was with Zach Wilson. Finally, Mike White is back as the team starting quarterback, back from injury, and that helps Garrett Wilson a ton. He was balling out with Mike White. Love the upside here against the Seahawks.
At wide receiver 14, speaking of Seahawks, we got DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf, we loved him last week. He put up a solid 17 points, getting tons of targets, tons of catches. The touchdown wasn't there. If it was there, would have had a great week. But again, plays the Jets, plays Sauce Gardner. It is a tough matchup for DK. If Lockett doesn't play, he might move up a little bit, but with Lockett, he might move down. It's a bit of a weird spot. It is a tough matchup against New York.
Next up, Jalen Waddle. He has been pretty inconsistent this year. He has been elite at points and then horrible at other points of the season. Also, Tua might not play, and if he doesn't play, that could hurt him big time. Ideally, Tua does play, but it is a tough matchup against New England.
Next up, at wide receiver 16, we got Mike Williams. Mike Williams, another guy, the Chargers offense. Justin Herbert, though, was not throwing a ton of touchdowns recently. Eckler's getting a lot of them, but had a good amount of yards last week. Not a ton of catches, but the yards were there. Big Mike, though, his upside is super high. He can score touchdowns, deep bomb touchdowns every single week. Kind of that boomer bust guy, but has been safer this season. He's a great play.
First player in the next tier, Michael Pittman. Unfortunately, Monday Night Football just happened. He was pretty bad. This Colts offense was awful. Only 3 points they scored. Nick Foles looked pretty bad. Michael Pittman, again, still probably should be started, but upside definitely takes a hit.
And next up, we have Christian Watson. Christian Watson was balling out at halftime, had 8 targets, 6 receptions, a good amount of yards, and then what happens? He gets a hip injury and he's out the rest of the game. Little bit concerning. Again, he might not play, but if he does play, he's looking like Rodgers' favorite target at the moment. Tons of targets going his way, good amount of yards. And you know Christian Watson, what is he known for? That touchdown upside. He can have a boom week any single week.
Next up, Mike Evans has been awful. Chris Godwin has been way better. Fournette's been getting the ball a lot more. Mike Evans, connection with Tom Brady has just been off. He has not been good. But last time he did play the Panthers, had a pretty solid game. I want to say it was around 15 targets. So again, they're trying to get on the ball. Hopefully the connection's there. But again, it is a pretty low floor.
Next up, we have Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith has been balling out recently. Last week scored, was it 1 or 2 touchdowns? Had a very good game. Gardner Minshew threw him a ton of yards. And this Eagles offense, it's looking like almost all the yards are going to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and then a bit are going to Dallas Goedert. Both these guys, great plays in fantasy. Devontae Smith, pretty safe floor. I don't even think it matters too much if Hurts plays or if Goddard plays, because if Hurts plays, the offense might score more, but have less passing yards. Gardner Minshew threw a ton of yards. Love the start of Devontae Smith.
Another player who's fringe, same tier, fringe next year. We'll throw him at the bottom tier here. Jerry Jeudy has been absolutely balling out. Love to see it. We were definitely calling him being better than Sun before the season, and it's definitely looking like it right now. Love to see it. Jerry Jeudy, again, this Broncos offense sucks. It is horrible. They just fired Nathaniel Hackett. But Jerry Jeudy still is at least getting some fantasy production. Not as good as we thought, because again, this offense is horrible, but he's at least startable for fantasy.
And next up, we have Juju Smith-Schuster. We liked him last week, and he did pretty bad. Under 7 fantasy points, but he plays the Broncos. Broncos are number 1 against wide receivers. But what did Juju do last time he played him? Over 20 points, had tons of targets. The Chiefs offense, very explosive. Kelsey's obviously going to get the ball, but this target number 2 for the Chiefs is Juju Smith-Schuster. Again, tons of targets. Love him as a star.
Another player who has been super inconsistent, but not really his own fault, DJ Moore. Quarterback play has been all over the map. Last week, started off the game with 0 points. Next thing I look, he had 20 points, just went off. He has been balling the last few weeks. I won't say he has multiple 20-point performances in the last few weeks. Again, it's just inconsistencies with him because of the quarterback play, but he does have super high upside.
And our last player in this video, we have Drake London. Drake London, again, this Falcons offense isn't scoring a lot, but Desmond Ritter's clear favorite target is Drake London, getting good targets, good receptions, good yards. The upside isn't super high, but with his targets, with his yards, he is a very safe play.
And guys, thank you again for watching the video. Again, check out our Chalkboard free group chat with all of our extra rankings on there. Thanks again for watching. See you guys next time.